are studying the book of Joshua, and it's going to be Joshua chapters 18 and 19, which is really exciting and good news. And these chapters continue the division of the country. Okay. If you remember, we read chapters 16 and 17 last week, and we had the division of the land to the tribes of Joseph. Okay, Joseph is not one tribe. We said it's two tribes. Actually, it's two. It's kind of like even three tribes if you look at it, because it's Ephraim, one tribe, and then half a tribe of Manasseh and another half a tribe of Manasseh, right? We remember that the tribe of Manasseh, one half is settled in the east part of the Jordan River, which is today Jordan, and the other half is in the west part of the Jordan. And Ephraim is settled next to Manasseh. And before our break, we read about the tribe of Judah getting their own little part of the land in the south of Israel. So the majority of the country now is already divided into these three tribes, okay, Manasseh, Ephraim, and Judah. But we still have, okay, in theory, we need to have 9 more tribes, because we have 12 tribes. So we need 9 more tribes, okay? But we're going to see that today we're talking about 7 more tribes, because the tribe of the Levites, they don't get their own land. They're the ones that serve in the temple, and then they get kind of like dispersed around all the other tribes. So let's see how that works. Yes.
Will we talk about Dan and why they moved somewhere?
Today we're going to do
Okay.
that. Yeah, that's exactly good. How do you know that? You looked ahead. You prepared it. That's general knowledge.
No.
Okay.
History
Okay,
of
so let's start reading Joshua 18. And the whole community of Israelites assembled at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. The land was now under their control, but there remained 7 tribes of the Israelites that had not yet received their portion. Okay. So Joshua said to the Israelites, "How long will you be slack about going and taking possession of the land that the Eternal, the God of your ancestors, has assigned to you? Appoint 3 representatives from each tribe. I will send them out to go through the country and write down a description of it for purposes of apportionment, and then come back to me. They shall divide it into 7 parts. Judah shall remain by its territory in the south, and the house of Joseph shall remain by its territory in the north. When you have written down the description of the land in 7 parts, bring it here to me. Then I will cast lots for you here before the Eternal, our gods. For the Levites have no share among you, since God's priesthood is their portion. And Gad and Reuben and the half-tribe of Manasseh have received the portions that were assigned to them by Moses, the servant of God, on the eastern side of the Jordan." The men set out on their journey. Joshua ordered those who were leaving to write down a description of the land. "Go, traverse the country and write down a description of it. Then return to me, and I will cast lots for you here at Shiloh before God." Okay, so these are like ancient cartographers, right? You know what cartography is? Like
map making.
Map making. Okay, so here are like the first cartographers in history, at least in the Bible, and that's what they do. So the men went and traversed the land. They described it in the document, town by town, in 7 parts, and they returned to Joshua in the camp at Shiloh. Joshua cast lots for them at Shiloh before God, and there Joshua apportioned the land among the Israelites according to their divisions. Okay, so we're going to go and read the divisions now, which is a little bit more technical. But before we do that, okay, here is a nice painting from the 18th century, which is in Holland. And it depicts, if you could see, right? You could see how Joshua and the priest next to him have all these lots. They put it like in a jar, according to the way this guy, and he's blindfolded and he has to pull something out of the jar. What is he pulling out of the jar? His part of the lot. And you see here, okay, on the table, okay, are these like scrolls. These are the scrolls where they map out the whole land. So they go and they map out the whole land into 7 parts for the 7 remaining tribes. Okay, again, 7 remaining tribes because the Levites don't get anything. Gad, Reuben, Menashe already got their portion on the eastern side of the Jordan. Okay, and then Ephraim, okay, and Judah got their portion. So we are at 6. Wait, so we should be at 7 again. Oh yeah, no, that we don't count the Levites. Okay, so 5. So we have 7 more tribes that need to be getting their portions. 5 tribes already got it. 7 more. Which is like an interesting process to understand like what's going on here. Let's read one of the commentaries about what went on and then see if that maybe that will answer our questions. Okay, chapter 18 begins with us learning that all the Israelites gathered at Shiloh to build the first non-mobile tabernacle, one that lasted for 369 years until the Beit HaMikdash was built in Jerusalem. So first of all, this is a very dramatic thing that happens that is just mentioned in the chapter, which not very many people stop and pay attention to. The Israelites, if you remember in the book of Exodus, when they leave Egypt, okay, they go and wander in the desert for 40 years. Very important things happen to them. One of them is they get the Torah. The other one is they build the tabernacle. If you remember, there's so many Torah portions that are dedicated to what happens in that tabernacle, how it's built, what gold, the size, the measures, how they, everywhere they go, they went in these 40 years, the tabernacle was with them. They disassembled it and they built it everywhere they went. That was the spiritual center for them. God's presence, God's Shekhinah was in the tabernacle and walked with them for 40 years. And then they get to the land of Israel. Okay? And then what's going to happen now? What are they going to be doing with the tabernacle? So apparently the tabernacle was at the Gilgal when they just entered and maybe somewhere else. But finally, it finds like a permanent place in Shiloh, okay, which is very, very interesting. So only 369 years later, the temple, the permanent temple, is going to be rebuilt again in Jerusalem. But that's very important to understand that for 369 years, there was an active religious center not in Jerusalem. Jerusalem was not in the hands of the Israelites. And this happens in the book of Joshua and happens in Shiloh.
Rabbi,
Yeah?
did they make a building or did they just park the mobile one and not move it?
That's a very good, we're gonna talk about it more when there's more descriptions about the temple in Shiloh. Um, but basically, all the commentaries ask your question. They want to know, oh, was it a permanent building? What does this mean there was like a real temple before the real temple built in Jerusalem? So the answer is no. And they had a combination of walls up to a certain height, and the rest of it was with the tent. How do you call like the walls of the tent? The sides, yeah, the sides of the tents, okay, like in the tabernacle. So it was like a combination. It wasn't like a full erected temple like the one Solomon built.
It says it's non-mobile.
Right, but it wasn't a permanent in the sense that it was like a permanent building. Okay, there were no walls to it. The walls were, it was like a nasukkah, okay, where let's say it was like, partially attached to a permanent building, and partially like open. So immediately following a very short verse about erecting the Mishkan, the tabernacle, Joshua chastises the 7 tribes who have not yet conquered their portions of the land. The 15th century commentator Abarbanel explains why these tribes were delaying their mission. They feared that as long as the borders remained undefined, the Israelites would be united. But once clearly defined, and each tribe for themselves mentality might emerge. Okay, so this comes to answer is a very important question that we might be asking was like, why is like taking it so long for all the tribes to settle down? Especially if Ephraim and Manasseh and Gad and Reuben and Judah have their place. Why is like taking so long for the others to do it? And especially because we also read like in previous chapters that this lottery was done already once. So why is it like it seems like it's happening again now? So it's their fear that once everyone settles in their own place, we're each going to take care of our own. Okay, we're not going to like care so much about one another. That solidarity of like being one people. But that's a beautiful thought, but it's also paralyzes them from settling down and starting like, their own life. Okay. It's like like people on a ship that kind of like gets swept away and almost drowns, and they're all like on a swept to a small island, and they learn how to live together and they take care of one another for like 20 years, and they live and then suddenly they're rescued and someone comes and saves them and wants to take them back to their own lives and to their homes and everything to rebuild their lives. And they're like, no, we're comfortable this way. We'll keep, being here on the. So it's like that kind of like mentality that the tribes are going through as well. So what's the function of Shiloh? So the timing of building the Mishkan now, instead of what seems more logically to be after all the land is conquered, is no accident. Even with nearly half of the tribes already having established their portions, all the Israelites came together in unity to build the Mishkan. Not just the 7 remaining tribes, all 12 tribes got to the Mishkan in Shiloh. Now the Israelites had a center for communal spiritual expression, and private offerings to God were no longer allowed. Our sages tell us that this spiritual focus would empower the remaining tribes to conquer their land with the knowledge that they are already unified regardless of territorial division. It's an odd set of instructions Joshua gives to these 7 tribes. Appoint men to traverse the land, describe their inheritance in writing, bring that book back to Joshua, and he will then proceed with the prophetic lottery ritual at the Mishkan to confirm their inheritance. Why is this lottery even necessary? Okay, the details of the land inheritance were clearly demarcated already in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, so it was like already settled there. So why is like happening again? The definition of boundaries for the portions of land was never meant to be a purely legalistic division of property. True ownership comes from what they do with their inheritance. It is only after they have collectively claimed their portion, built a nation, and established unity and spiritual ownership that their inheritance is complete and the multitude of laws pertaining to the land of Israel take effect. The lottery doesn't define the borders. If that were the case, then it would only be required for 11 tribes, as the 12th portion is clearly whatever remained. Yet later we'll see that portion detailed as well. The lottery is about the integrity of the process and the internalization that this land is for all of Israel from God, giving to them as a unified nation and for a holy purpose. Okay, so this is written by Molly Morris from Toronto. And it's very interesting, like her concept is like all the tribes came to Shiloh, and that's in Hebrew. In English, you say Shiloh. Okay, have you heard that expression? Okay, and in Shiloh, they kind of like look each other in the eye, and it's like, although we're each going to go and settle in our own place, okay, we're going to still be unified. We have a spiritual center now. We're going to meet here a few times a year for the 3 festivals, and on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. We're all going to meet here together. We're going to bring sacrifices together to God, and God's presence is here. Okay, so we're not neglecting God. We're not neglecting one another. Okay, we're all going to be like unified, and they all do it together. And then the remaining tribes go and kind of like scout. I mean, not the remaining, all the tribes go out and scout 7 more areas, and they divide it up. But in a way, even the 5 tribes that already got their lot, okay, they're part of the survey. So they are also responsible for all the parts that the others are getting. So it's just like a closure of this whole process. It's kind of like backwards. They should have like conquered the whole land and then divided, or maybe tell everyone in it to begin with, this is your part, and then go ahead. But because of the different reasons that we saw, okay, and because of, I think also mainly because the land was still inhabited by other nations, so it wasn't like it didn't just flow as they thought it would. Okay, so it's like ideal versus reality is what happens here. Yeah, Inga?
How many people approximately were in each tribe? Is that evenly distributed or?
No, that was not evenly distributed. I think did I bring this chart here for last week? Oh, I didn't.
Did they get the amount of land according to their size though?
Yes.
Yeah, they got it according to the size, but there was a chart, but I guess I forgot to bring it last week. About
The map shows.
yeah, the map. We didn't know, but I wanted something like with numbers. Okay, maybe I'll bring it next week so you can see like, but it's supposedly proportionate to that. Okay, so now the question is really how many lotteries of the land of Israel were there? Because we read before that there were other lotteries. Okay, and this is a piece written by Josh from New Rochelle. So 7 tribes remain without allocation of land. Reuben, Gad, Manasseh, Judah, and Ephraim all had their land allocated already. Joshua sends cartographers out to map out the remaining part of the land and assign it to the remaining tribes. Then Joshua gathers everyone for a lottery. Is this the same lottery as the last chapter, or is this a different lottery? Because we read already about the lottery. The conquest seems to have been accomplished in order. First, the outer tribes conquered their land back in Deuteronomy. Next, the 2 larger and more powerful tribes of Judah and the sons of Joseph conquered their territory. Okay, so what happens is this, okay? Menashe, Gad, and Reuben, these are like the outer borders. Okay, Judah takes the outer border here. Okay, this is all surrounded by the neighbors of the Israelites, which all happen to be enemies. Nothing new. And
Still
these
got-
tribes were on the ocean. Okay, that's another border. Okay, so the borders are defined, okay, by but and the big tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh and Judah take parts within. Now everything needs to be divided within. Okay, this is the kind of like what Josh is telling us is happening. So now the story focuses on the remaining tribes. Some commentators point to the fact that these other tribes were smaller, so they banded together to help each other. They were afraid of settling their areas because then they would lose their combined fighting force. So it's not only what we said that they would in the previous commentary said that they were afraid that they won't be united anymore and that they'll lose each other and their partnership. This is also, they were smaller, say they were also afraid they're going to lose their combined fighting force, okay, once they each settle on their own. But the timeline, he says, does not seem to match the details. The outer tribes can be set aside as their territory was granted in Deuteronomy. Why would Joshua send out cartographers only for the smaller tribes? How did Judah and Joseph know the borders of their lands? It would make sense, he said, that the cartographers were sent to demarcate the whole land, and then the land would be split. What would be the point of having a lottery for only two tribes? Also, how would the smaller tribes know what land to conquer without it being assigned? So based on the text, he says, the entire land was conquered. The land was now under their control. The issue was that the smaller tribes had not yet taken over their part, but their remainder severed tribes of the Israelites had not received their portions. Judah and Joseph remain in their areas in the north and south, leaving the rest of the land open. They shall divide it into 7 parts. Judah shall remain by its territory in the south, and the house of Joseph shall remain by its territory in the north. If Joseph and Judah had received their portion by lottery already, why would Joshua have to confirm that they will remain in their areas? There are 2 possible answers here, he says. The first is that there were 2 lotteries. The first, the one that we read in previous chapters, demarcated the land for the larger tribes. Joseph and Judah were large, and they were able to take over their areas easily. The rest of the tribes needed to band together to conquer the rest, which did not allow them to settle in a specific area. So now there was a lot of open land, but none of the tribes knew where to go. So Joshua had a second lottery. The second option is that the lottery only happened now. Judah and Joseph had an outer tribe situation whereby they simply settled in the areas that the nation had conquered together because they were larger. Now Joshua conducts a lottery demarcating the plots that retroactively confirmed the allotments to Judah and Joseph. Okay, so he has an interesting approach, but at the bottom line, what he says is like the Israelites conquered the land, okay? The big tribes settled all the borders, but then the smaller tribes had to secure the rest of it, okay? But it wasn't divided yet. So when they came to divide it, it reaffirmed all the tribes had to participate in, the 7 tribes had to participate in the lottery, but it worked out with the other tribes, and they all were able to settle any, they didn't have any disputes. It all worked out, like miraculously, somehow they all agreed on it. Yeah.
Sure. Is there any commentary on how the Levites felt about not getting the land? Were they happy because they were in a position, you said, or were they?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. That's a very good question about what's the story with the Levites and why did they not get their own lot. Okay, here's just a photo of Tel Shiloh. Okay, a very interesting archaeological place, which is in Samaria today. I actually went there once on a trip with my congregation from Israel for Saba, and we saw the biblical sites of it and kind of like the remaining of the tabernacle that were there, or supposedly, okay, but it's a well documented area. Okay. Now comes a question: to which tribe does Jerusalem belong, or Yevus? Oh wait, no, we still have to read. Okay, now, yeah, right, because now we get to the lot of the tribe of the Benjamites. By their clans came out first. Okay, so the Benjamites were the Binyamin, the younger son. He was like the first in the casting out the lots that were not divided to take out his lot. Okay, and okay, where's his part? Let's just bring it here. Okay, here the small tribe of Benjamin is here. Okay, it's within the borders, as you can see, very close to Judah. And if you see the little dot where it says Jerusalem, right under the A of Benjamin, you see a dot, and it says Jerusalem. Okay. We're going to see it's not so simple. Jerusalem is not necessarily in the hands of the Benjamites. Okay, so the lot of the tribe of Benjamites by their clans came out first. The territory that fell to their lot lay between the Judites and the Josephites. The boundary on their northern rim began at the Jordan. Okay, right here on the Jordan River is where it started. Okay, and if you see, Jericho is in their territory. Okay. Boundary ascended to the northern flank of Jericho, ascended westward into the hill country, and ran on to the wilderness of Beth Aven. Okay, so it goes west in here. From there, the boundary passed on southward to Luz, to the flank of Luz, that is Beth El. Then the boundary descended to Atrot Adar and to the hill south of lower Beth Horon. The boundary now turned and curved onto the western rim, and the boundary ran southward from the hill on the south side of Beth Horon till it ended at Kiryat Baal, that is Kiryat Yearim, a town of the Judites. That was the western rim. Okay, so this little part here describes all of that. The southern rim, from the outskirts of Kiryat Yearim, the boundary passed westward and ran to the fountain of the waters of Neftoach, which is near Jerusalem. Then the boundary descended to the foot of the hill by the valley of Ben Hinnom, at the northern end of the valley of Rephaim. Then it ran down the valley of Hinnom along the southern flank of the Jebusites to En Rogel. Okay, so this area here where you see Jerusalem, this is where the Jebusites were living. The Jebusites are in Jerusalem. So it's in the territory of Binyamin, but they don't have it. Okay? It's a different nation that controls the city of Jerusalem. We're going to see later on, there's different verses that are actually saying no. Jerusalem was in the hands of the tribe of Judah. Okay? So they're both like kind of like on the border. It's either Benjamin or Judah that have the city of Jerusalem. And we're gonna explain more what that means. But curving northward, it ran onto En Shemesh and ran onto Glilot, facing the ascent of Adumim, and descended to the stone of Bochan, son of Reuven. It continued northward to the edge of the Arava and descended into the Arava. The boundary passed on to the northern flank of Beth Hogla, and the boundary ended at the northern tongue of the Dead Sea, at the southern end of the Jordan. Okay, so they are here, right? You know, kind of like where the Dead Sea begins is kind of like where they are. That was the southern boundary. On their eastern rim, finally the Jordan was their boundary. That was the portion of the Benjamites by their clan, according to its boundaries on all sides. And the towns of the tribe of the Benjamites by its clan were Jericho, Beth Hogla, Emek Keziz, Beth Arava, Zamarim, Beth El, Avim, Para, Ofra, Chefar, Amona, Ofni, and Geva, towns with their villages, also Gibeon, Ramah, Be'erot, Mitzpeh, Chefirat Motza, Rekem, Imprel, Tarala, Tsela, Elef, Yevus. That is Jerusalem. They're telling us it's Jerusalem, but its name is Yevus. The original name of Jerusalem was Yevus. Why? Because it's controlled by the Jebusites. Givat and Kiryat. Towns with their villages, that was the portion of the Benjamites by their clans. Okay, territory of Benjamites. Now, the second lot, oh wait, so I just wanted to complete what I said here, which is, wait, it's not too big now. Okay, to which tribe does Jerusalem belong, or Jevus? Is it still called here? As it's still called here? To the tribe of Judah, as stated in chapter 15 that we read, verse 63, or to Benjamin, as related here in our chapter in verse 28. The temple will later be described as straddling both of these territories. Okay, so very interesting that at the end, the temple was built exactly where the two tribes meet. Okay, very interesting concept. It doesn't belong to anyone. The temple doesn't belong to anyone. It's like in a neutral area where the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, representing both mothers, Judah representing Rachel, Leah, and Benjamin representing Rachel, the two wives of Jacob, okay, representing all the brothers in a sense. So like the temple's in a neutral place that's good for everyone. And here in excavations on Ophel, which was one of these places that was mentioned, we see a wall from the biblical time of the Jebusites before the temple was built. So, you know, Jerusalem is like so many layers of archaeology. So when we go, we'll try and go and see the wall of before Jerusalem. Okay, we're gonna go. Anyone else wants to go with Steve and George? We're gonna go on winter break. Okay.
And Steve?
Why? Well, we'll get more people. Don't worry, we'll just speak. I'll get more people. Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay, well, don't worry, we'll find you. Yeah.
Based on the current situation in Israel, land situation, and based on the biblical sources, do you think, did each tribe get a nice portion of land, some water, some pastoral land, some agriculture? Or did any of the tribes get a really nice area and other tribe get a really miserable area?
No, I think they all got something that was like that was good, so they could, you know, have fertile lands and things of that sort.
So the cartography probably included that
Yeah.
concept,
Yeah, they worked, I guess, yeah, I think that's probably exactly what they
Did
did.
anybody notice, because I didn't notice it at first, the man standing
Yeah.
4 layers of the bricks of the stones down.
Yeah, that's Joshua on the photograph.
His descendant.
That's the archaeologist that found it. I forgot his name. He discovered it, and he was the one that decided that it's a Jebusite wall based on archaeology. Why?
Wasn't Carter.
No,
No.
no.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
when they cleared, gave these people these portions. If there were other people living there, they just killed them, or they moved them away, or?
So I
The
think
people there.
it depends on what point in history you're talking about. Sometimes they fought that, the people there fought against the Israelites, and the Israelites kind of like fought against them and inherited the land. Sometimes they went to war, no one won the war, and they just kept on living next to each other. Okay, and sometimes they even had pacts with these places. So it's like really depends on which area and what history happened there. Okay, so that's kind of like what the Bible tells. That these are the stories of the Bible, and we'll go through. You'll see my answer to you. You'll see how it happened, how it unfolds in the different stories that we're going to read. Okay, so now we're at chapter 19, very long chapter, very detailed. Sorry. The second lot fell to Simeon. The portion of the tribe of the Simeonites by their clan lay inside the portion of the Judites. Okay, this is very, very dramatic information. Okay, and that is. Wait, sorry. I'll show you here. This. Okay, Simeon. You see here at the bottom. He's within Judah. No other tribe has that. Every other tribe is independent, has at least its own borders that they control, that they decide on. Not Simeon. He's put within the tribe of Judah. Yeah. What?
Oh, up at the top.
Here?
Yeah.
Zevulun? Yeah, but he's not, but he has borders with all the others. Okay? He has its own borders that he can define. There's no one he's not inside someone else.
Yeah.
Okay. Simeon is like he's like his own, he doesn't have his own independence.
Do we know why?
Yeah, but it's all in the
Yeah, we
negative.
do. What?
So he's all in the negative.
Yeah, but he's surrounded by the tribe of Judah. Okay. He has no independence, and
Is
that's
he a
it.
herder?
Well, let's see. No, we don't know exactly what they did, but we'll see in a moment why. Well, what is their portion comprise? Beersheba, that's where my mother is right now. Okay, or Sheba, Sheba. Okay, it's called Beersheba or Sheba, which is 7 for the 7 wells that Abraham built there. Okay, and actually, my father used to take all the guests that came over to tell Sheba where Abraham had, built like an altar to God, and that one of the wells is there as well. It's a beautiful, fascinating biblical site that my father loved showing people. Let me actually show you this really quickly here. Okay. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, here you have a beautiful okay.
Welcome to Tel Beersheba, a biblical city in the Negev region and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was created thousands of years ago and was named after the oath Abraham gave to Abimelech, mentioned in the book of Genesis. Beersheba appears over 30 times in the Bible. The verse from Dan to Beersheba describes it as the southernmost city in the land of Israel. A few miles away we can see the modern city of Beersheba, the thriving capital of the Negev desert. The intensive excavations expose large portions of the ancient city. Among the important findings is the large water system, 17 meters deep with 5 underground spaces. It served the residents mainly during siege time. The most fascinating artifact is the horn sacrificial altar, the first of its kind.
Where your rabbi got married, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, because my father liked the site so much, and they had a wedding hall there. So we got married on the tell of Beersheba.
Ever found in Israel that matches the biblical description accurately.
Nice, right?
That's great.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna have to visit Tel Beersheba as well, because it's just phenomenal. You have to see it in your own eyes. You understand like how settled the land was back then. Okay, now we go back to the borders of Simeon. Okay. Chatzar Shu'al, Bala, Ezem, and Tolad, Bethul, Horma, Tziklad, Beth Markaboth, Hatzar Shushat, Beth Lavot, and Sharuen, 13 towns with their villages, Ein Rimon, Eter, and Ashan, 4 towns with their villages, together with all the villages in the vicinity of those towns, down to Baalat Be'er and Ramat Negev. That was a portion of the tribe of the Simeonites by their clans. The portion of the Simeonites was part of the territory of the Judites, since the share of the Judites was larger than they needed. The Simeonites received a portion inside their portion. Okay, so the explanation of why the Simeonites were inside, okay, is because the Judites got too much of a larger part. They didn't need all of that, so they got to kind of host the Simeonites. However, that does not explain why they could have got it on the border of Judah and still had their own independence. So that still does not fully explain that, and we're going to see in a moment why this happened. Okay, because all the tribe received select portions of land, except for Simeon. The portion of the Simeonites was part of their territory of the Judites, since the share of the Judites was larger than they needed. The Simeonites received a portion inside their portion, as we just read. The official line is that Simeon did not receive its own portion because Judah's portion was too large, so it spilled over and enveloped Simeon's portion. It is a nice attempt to whitewash the situation. The only other tribe with portions in another is within the family of Joseph, and there each tribe has its own made portion, but only overlap a little. So Simeon is most likely treated differently as a result of Moses leaving Simeon out of the final blessings at the end of Deuteronomy. Okay, when Moses blesses all the tribes, before he dies, before they go into the land of Israel, he blesses each tribe. One tribe he doesn't bless, the tribe of Simeon. The commentators explain that Moses did not give Simeon a blessing because of their sin in leading the rebellion at Baal Peor. Actually, Simeon is not the only tribe to be scattered throughout other territories without a set boundary of their own. The other tribe is Levi. Levi's scattered lot was noted often starting back in Deuteronomy and continuing through the book of Joshua. The official line is that Levi is scattered as their portion is serving God, and they need to focus on the temple Mishkan duties. Okay, so why 2 tribes don't get their independence? Why is Simeon swallowed within Judah and they don't get their own designated territory? And why does the Levites don't get their own territory? Why are they scattered among all the other tribes?
It sounds like one is a blessing and the other's.
Okay, maybe Simeon's
The thing with Joseph.
maybe Simeon's lack of land does not have to do with Moses' lack of a blessing. Perhaps Simeon and Levi do not get portions because of Jacob's blessing. When Jacob dies in the book of Genesis, he blesses all his children. He blesses Levi and Simeon, but there's no blessing there. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of violence are their wars. That's what he said, wares. My soul, Jacob says, will not enter their secret council. Let my honor not be identified with their assembly. For in their anger they killed a man, and through their willfulness they maimed an ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is powerful, and their fury, for it is cruel. I will divide them throughout Jacob and scatter them throughout the land of Israel. So it's Jacob, their father, that he blesses them, but it's really doesn't come out exactly as a great blessing. You guys are so violent, and you know what you did, okay, with the story of Dinah and Shechem, and how they kind of like butchered all those people and angered and risked the whole status of Jacob in the land of Israel, okay? Therefore, I will scatter you around. The Levites don't get their own place, and Simeonites don't get their own place because of this. Jacob's problematic blessing links the two tribes. Both tribes are told they would be scattered. That is exactly what happens. The text in Joshua also matches the blessing of Jacob. Simeon is scattered in the tribe of Judah. The very next blessing in Genesis is to Judah. Simeon and Levi are linked in Jacob's blessing. And chapter 20 details the cities of the Levites. This could be the subtle way of the text hinting at the real reason why these two tribes are scattered. Okay, so that's very, very interesting to see that. Okay, let's try to go a little bit quicker today. The third lot emerged for the Zebulunites by their clans, the boundary of their portion starting at Sarid. Their boundary ascended westward to Maralah, touching the Beshet and touching the Vadi alongside Yokneam. And it also ran from Sarid along the eastern side, where the sun rises, past the territory of Kislot Tavor and on to the Berat and ascended to Yafia. From there, it ran back to the east toward the sunrise to Gat Hefer and Etz Kachatzin, and on to Rimon, where it curved to Nea. Then it turned that is the boundary on the north to Hanaton. Okay, this is the kibbutz, okay, the conservative Masorti kibbutz in Israel today, Hanaton. That's where my daughter's going to be. Okay, my sister lived there, and we're going to go visit that as well. Okay, and its extreme limits were the valley of Iftach El, Katat, Nahalal, Shimron, Aidala, and Bethlehem. 12 towns with their village. This is the northern Bethlehem. It's not the Bethlehem that's near Jerusalem. Okay, Bethlehem Aglilit. 12 towns with their villages. That was the portion of the Zebulunites by their clans. Those towns with their villages. Okay, so all of this, okay, this is where Zebulun is, okay, here in the blue, in the middle. The fourth lot fell to Issachar, the Issacharites by their clans. Their territory comprised Jezreel, Kislot, Shunem, Hafarim, Sion, Anaharat, Rabith, Kisyon, Ebeth, Remeth, En Ganim, En Chada, and Bet Pazez. The boundary touched Tabor, the Mount of Tabor, which is in Galilee, Shashazima, and Bet Shemesh, and their boundary ran to the Jordan. 16 towns with their villages. That was a portion of the tribe of Issacharites by their clans, the towns with their villages. Okay, so Issachar is right here. Okay, not far from the Sea of Galilee. The fifth lot fell to the tribes of the Asherites by their clans. Okay, the Asherites were here on the north where Lebanon is, where Haifa and Lebanon is. Okay, their boundary ran along Chelkath, Chali, Beten, Achshpa, Alamelech, Amad, and Mishal, and it touched Carmel on the west, and Shichor Libnat. It also ran along the east side to Bet Dagon, and touched Zevulun in the valley of Yiftach El to the north, as also Beth Emek and Neiel. Then it ran to Kabul on the north, Hebron, Rehov, Ammon, and Cana up to Great Sidon. Sidon is already in Lebanon. The boundary turned to Ramah and on the fortified city of Tiyal. Then the boundary turned to Hosa, and it ran on westward to Mechbel Achziv, Uma, Afek, and Rehov, 20 towns with their villages. That was a portion of the tribe of the Asherites by their clans, those towns with their villages. The sixth lot fell to the Naphtalites by their clans. Okay, here is the Naphtalites on the northern border of Israel. Their boundary ran from Chelef and Lon Bazanim, Adami Nekev and Yavniel to Lakum, and it ended at the Jordan. The boundary then turned westward to Aznot Tabor and ran from here to Hukuk. It touched Zevulun on the south, and it touched Asher on the west, and Judah at the Jordan on the east. Its fortified towns were Tzidim, Zer Hamat, Rakat, Kinneret, the Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, Adama, Ramah, Hatzor, Kedesh, Edrei, and Hatzor, Iron, Migdal El, Chorem, Bethanat, and Bethshemesh, 19 towns with their villages. That was a portion of the tribe of the Nephites by their clans, the towns with their villages. The seventh lot, that's the last one, fell to the tribe of the Danites by their clan. Now we're talking about the tribe of Dan. Okay, they are settled here. Dan is like in the area of Jaffa and Tel Aviv today, and into, okay, and there are other borders with Ephraim, Benjamin, and Judah. But they also have the ocean, okay, the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, which is called the Great Sea, also, okay. However, okay, we also have Dan situated in the north, and that's the question George asked before. Why does Dan also situated in north and also in the center, lower parts of Israel? We're going to get an answer for that in a moment. Okay, so their allotted territory comprised of Tzora, Eshtarol, Irshemesh, Shalabim, Ayalon, Ikla, Elon, Timna, Ekron, Eleket, Gibeon, Balabat, Yehud, Meibrak, Gat Rimon, and Meyarkon, and Rakon at the border near Jaffa. But the territory of the Danites slipped from their grasp. So the Danites migrated and made war on Leshem. Okay, that's also kind of like what Inga was asking. Okay, so sometimes there were like other nations in the area, and it slipped away from them. The other nations were stronger. They took it away from them. Okay, so they captured it. So they went up north to Leshem. They captured it and put it to the sword. They took possession of it and settled in it. And they changed the name of Leshem to Dan after their ancestor Dan. Okay, so here is Dan. It used to be called Leshem, and they rescued this place from the people that were here, and they made it their territory. So they all immigrated for this area because they were not able to inhabit the place because of the enemies. They were too strong, and I would only guess these are the Philistines. that came and took over, okay, because they were like here very strong. And we're going to read afterwards in the book of Judges on how difficult it was for them and how the Philistines actually invaded the area of the Danites. So they ran away. They went up north and settled up here within the northern part of that Naphtali. That's quite a trip. It doesn't really make sense, right? In many ways. But this is the way the Bible is explaining to us why there are two locations called the territory of Dan.
Is that, is that Ashkelon right next to,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that was one of the 5 Philistine cities.
exactly,
So that was
later on.
exactly.
But that,
That was a portion of the tribe of the Danites, right? They claimed those towns with their villages. When they had finished allotting the land by its boundaries, the Israelites gave a portion in their midst to Joshua, son of Nun. They divided all the land of Israel, and now they come to Joshua, and they give him a part. At God's command, they gave him the town that he asked for, Timnath Serach, in the hill of the country of Ephraim. Fortified the town and settled in it. These are the portions assigned by law to the tribes of Israel by the priest Eleazar, Joshua, son of Nun, and the family heads before God at Shiloh at the entrance of the tent of meeting, when they had finished dividing the land. Okay, so this is kind of like supposed to end. Okay, this is like how it all happened. Okay, and let's just focus on just a few more points before we finish today. One is Tel Dan. This is a very important, huge biblical site, okay, which we'll talk about at a different time. But it's mentioned, the Tel Dan is mentioned here in the stele that's in the Israel Museum today, and it's found here, which is a proof that the Danites actually settled up north. Okay, and and then here the commentary is that the Danites lost control of their initial inheritance to the Amorites is related later in the book of Judges, and how the Danites relocated by conquering the Canaanite town of Leshem. Okay, so that we're also going to read about that later on. Okay, and the subsequent importance of Dan is demonstrated by the phrase from Dan to Beersheba. You remember that Beersheba is on the south part, okay? But Dan is on the north part. So there's like an expression from Dan to Beersheba, which kind of like describes the entire length of the land of Israel, because that appears 9 times in the entire Bible to explain the north and south borders of all the Israelites.
So that's known as a stela, that's a location marker.
Yeah, and it's mentioned there. Okay, and then I'm not going to go into all the history here of the Danites, but it's in our day, Tel Dan has become one of the most important archaeological sites in Israel. Among the most important discoveries there are the only surviving monumental temple complex from the northern kingdom of Israel, a Hellenistic inscription from the later phase of this cultic complex with a text in Greek and Aramaic, which includes the words to the God who is in Dan, and a 4,000-year-old Canaanite mud brick gate that preserves the earliest intact archway in the world. Most importantly, at the site of the ancient city of Dan was found the much discussed 9th century BCE King David's stela, which preserves the oldest textual reference to the historical King David. The Tel Dan Nature Reserve, including ancient Dan, is open to visitors. Okay, this was written by a professor of mine, Mark Bregman. Okay, and finally, Tibnet in the hill country of Ephraim was a Hellenistic and Hasmonean fortress that protected the road from Antipatris to Gofna. The biblical city is identified as Timnath, okay, Serach, the residence of Joshua, and his burial place, which we're going to read out at the end of the book of Joshua. But here is the archaeological excavations of that city. The city was fortified during the Canaanite period, long before the conquest of Joshua. Its steep foothills provided a natural defense. The early period of the city, according to the pottery shreds collected in the surveys, was from the Middle Bronze Second period. The other biblical name of the city, Timnath Cheres, may refer to the name or nature of the Canaanite city. Cheres means sun, implying that the Canaanite city that predated Joshua's conquest worshipped sun, similar to other cities in the Levant, such as Bet Shemesh, house of the sun. So it's very interesting to see the biblical map shown here, an ancient route indicated by a dashed line passed on the side of Tamnata, the Greek name of Timna, or Timnat Serach, which is marked with a red circle. Here you see, okay, is where they put Joshua. At the end of the day, okay, you work very hard, you get like a nice territory protected by all of Israelites. He's kind of in the middle. And that route connects the Shephelah to the hills of Samaria. Today, Route 60 goes along all of here. You see here Jerusalem, okay, Laish, Galim, Ramah, Mitzpah, Gibeon, Beth El, okay, Bachatzor, Ophrah. These are all settlements today that the modern Israel, okay, has settlements here and are settling here, the land all across Route 60. And many of the Arab villages preserve the Hebrew names that were here, which is very interesting as well. And it goes here all the way to Shechem. So this is kind of like the area where they put Joshua. So not the top of the hill, but like still in a hilly area, which is protected, but still maybe in a fertile area. So they kind of like pay tribute maybe to their leader by doing that. And last but not least, we wanted to show you something about Hanaton. Okay, the view of Tel Hanaton, the biblical area. No, biblical time. Is overlooking those, which is we were the educational center. So that's like we will stop the share and